people here don't realise what they actually have, And I think that's the important thing. And the historical elements attached to all of this and the heritage of Clondalkin, I think, is still a living history, can actually be incorporated more so in the educational system, I think, in the school environmental curriculum, perhaps.
They don't need to be enemies. Development and existing.
If developers involve the local community in the whole decision-making process, that at least then everybody is getting something out of it at the end of the day.
The canal really could be an oasis in the middle of a concrete desert.
Yeah,
and that's what it could be.
The Environment Working Group comprises a number of people living and working in the Clondalkin area of Dublin. Supported by the Clondalkin Partnership, they have commissioned this video to celebrate the history of the canal and its role in the life of the area. They also want to acknowledge the actions that local groups have already undertaken to improve the facilities on the canal and to focus attention on its development as a local amenity and tourist attraction.
The reason the Environment Working Group of the Partnership has actually focused one of the actions on the canal is as in the development or to facilitate the development and the future potential of local amenities that could have a positive impact socially on the local disadvantaged communities and could act also as a tourist attraction.
The Grand Canal, which runs from Ringsend in Dublin to Shannon Bridge in Offaly, started life in Clondalkin in 1756. It was here that the engineer commissioned to build the canal, Thomas Omer, commenced his work. Joe Williams is a local historian who lives close to the canal and has researched its history in the area.
Over a period, people have often asked why was Clondalkin picked, because some years later, the railway started here. And of course, if you look at the geophysical layout of the country, it's obvious why it was picked here. To the north, we have the large divide of the Liffey Valley. To the south, we have the Dublin going into the Wicklow Mountains. But here in Clondalkin, we're at the top of a very high hill that comes up from Dublin Port. And we have open country through to the middle, right through to the Shannon, albeit with problems to overcome, such as the Bog of Allen. So they started here, and Omer built the first 12 miles. But he was building a much wider canal than he had now. And he was doing everything as he was going along. Like, he built the locks, he cut out the waterway, he even built the lock keepers' houses long before they were needed. And we're lucky in that we have 3 of those lock keepers' houses still standing today, 2 in ruins and 1 being lived in at the 12th lock. From 1833 to 1838, passenger numbers rose from 50,000 to 120,000. But then you were coming into the era of the railways. A faster system, a better system. So the passenger declined and was eventually closed down approximately 80, 90 years after the canals opened and the railways took over. But the canals still kept going until the 1960s for heavy produce that needn't get there fast. The last project being carried on the canals was Guinness, barrels of Guinness, and they were able to schedule it so it was a continuous supply down to the towns along the canal, and the product was always there for use. A 100 years ago, if we'd have come out onto this stretch of canal, we would have been in countryside. There would be no houses, no big bridges. Hopefully we would have seen 3 or 4, maybe more boats travelling either way up the canal, up and down the canal. If we were lucky, we would have seen boats coming through the locks behind us and then coming through here, whipping up their horses and been towed faster to make up time on this long stretch, because it was on these stretches they made up the time they lost coming through the locks.
Phyllis MacDonald and her family were the last people to live in Omer's Lock House, situated beside the 11th lock. Her father was the lockkeeper, and Phyllis describes his work.
His job was when a canal boat would come up or down the canal, he'd had to be there to open the canal, the chamber, to let the boat in. Then when the boat would go by, he'd have to fill the lock again for another boat coming down another direction, right? And that was it. He had to be there maybe the 24 hours a day for all of this coming and going with the boats. It was a tough old job for the money he was earning. Boats be coming up a bit, maybe cargo of Guinness, cargo of coal, briquettes, all stuff like that, coming down to Salins down in Kildare. And then another cargo would come from up that direction down to the CIE, down the canal the other way. They were all cargo boats, and the men lived on the boats. We'd watch a boat coming down, right? We'd be going down to the shop for a loaf of bread. Now, them days there was no sliced bread, just the plain loaves. We used to get on the boat, go down to the 9th lock, get our bread, wait for the other boat coming back up and get another lift back up on another boat. Very seldom we had to walk, you know what I mean? And the boatman used to let us off right at the lock. We'd just step across and down to the house. The Guinness. When they'd come up from Guinness's with the barrels, the Guinness barrels on the boat. And they used to get, my mum-law dressed her and Dad, used to have a little galvanised bucket. And the man could take the gimlet out of the barrel and put a good lot of Guinness in the bucket for us, you know. And then he'd seal up the barrel again. And the Guinness used to be beautiful.
Most of these materials were found along the Grand Canal in Clondalkin on the North Bank. We've got bottles, all type of bottles. We've got the clay pipes. We've got this, which is a bayonet. We have to get the history on this one, and hopefully we'll get research done and find out actually what wars, if it ever went to a war, where it was. This here is a nail spear. This one here has been hand forged, and they were actually considered an illegal eel spear, and they weren't allowed to be used by the native Irish. And what they would do is, eels travel in the silt bank, and what they would do literally, they'd stand over the canal bank. The eel would be going through the silt bed, and he would drop it in, and then pull her up and get the eel and pull him up through here and pull him out. I'd like them to end up back in around the Grand Canal, preferably somewhere along maybe Omer's Lockhouse in there. They're from the area, they should stay in the area. They were found by local people, and this is just a sample of what's out there that local people have. And it's been a desired wish of the people up here, the community, that we have something in relation to the natural and built heritage, and the artefacts are kept here.
Over the past 10 years, there have been a number of local initiatives aimed at improving the facilities on the canal. One of these was a community employment scheme, which ran from 1995 to 2003. Billy O'Brien worked for a number of years as a supervisor on the scheme.
It was set up at the start mainly to put amenities back into the area. Clondalkin wouldn't be a great area for amenities and stuff like that. So the whole idea was to set up all these amenities along the canal and hopefully to get people back out and using the canal. This one here in particular, this would have been the setting up of the project at the very beginning. As you can see, it's it was just a dumping ground, and it would have been like this all the way down. At the start, we were only supposed to take in roughly 2 metres from the edge of the towpath here, but we took it on ourselves to take it right back in, and we eventually took it back into what you see now in front. On the north bank over here, we would have planted roughly 4,500 trees, right down to the M50. You would be talking about men that were really long-term unemployed. Over 35s the canal was for, really. Long-term unemployed. I had men in their 60s on the job, loved what they were doing, loved giving something back to the people of the area. And the main emphasis then was training these people. We'd set up FOSS training or whatever, horticultural training, tree planting, all that kind of stuff was done. They would take this on, and with the main objective is to get them back into the workforce, which the canal project had a great record for. You were looking at 18, 19 people going back into full-time employment within a 2-year, 3-year period, which is a fairly good record. We did eventually start up or set up the fishing. We put in fishing stands and stuff like that, and eventually then they were hoping to set up a canoe club, which I think at one stage there was one there before the canal project, and we were hoping that would come back into the area again. Apart from the fishing stands, there was a jetty put in as well, and the jetty is also used as a fishing stand. It's wheelchair accessible as well. It was great response from people. You were looking at an area, as I say, there would have been a fear there. You would look down the canal and you would say, no way was I walking down there. And when you look at it now, you can actually stand at the Lock and Key pub there and look down. You can actually see the M50 bridge. And this brought out a lot of people, a lot of children, elderly people walking down with their dogs, just out for the exercise.
In 1997, another local initiative focused on the rebuilding of a canal barge by the North Clondalkin Barge Company. Paul Billings was manager of this training and educational project, located in St Kevin's School, while Philip Orr was one of the trainees.
The aim of the project was to see could you develop an educational model for young people who had been in trouble with the justice system, as they say, and who had been early school leavers, and at the same time to develop community links and to develop an awareness of the locale, and in particular the canal barge and the canal.
It's just a friend of mine starting on it, so it's a barge up there. Went up and put my name down and just enjoyed it ever since, you know. Learned different types of welding, like to weld line underneath the barge, vertical welding, different types of welding, like the angles, and it was great to learn those skills, you know what I mean? I've never had a chance to do it anywhere else, so I enjoyed it.
Do you remember the shed going on?
No, I wasn't around when that's being, I don't think anyone was allowed in here when it's being like put up, like.
The shed was purpose built for the
Barge.
job.
Yeah.
It was hoped originally to complete the restoration of the barge and to develop a business plan around using it as a tourist enterprise. Unfortunately, that didn't come to be due to lack of resources, and it was actually a lot longer than we thought.
It was great, it was, especially with the people I was dealing with. Like some of them I grew up as kids, you know what I mean? We weren't about trading. But the fact that us to get in there and get stuck into the barge, we honestly thought I would have seen it on the canal down there, do you know what I mean? But I never reached that far. But after the barge, I ended up getting a job in a filling machine company, and they were doing welding, so basically picked up the welding a bit quicker, and other little things like how to lift, like safety, health and safety as well, like how to lift up the steel properly and all. That was like we would have just went in with our hands straight lifting it. They taught us how to lift with a block and chain and all, you know. Taught us new skills. Like.
From the standpoint of the staff and the management, we found it a very successful enterprise. We did have something like 38 people in the course of the 2.5 years who were registered on the project. We had a hard core of about 15, 16 at any given time, and quite a few went on to do the Leaving Cert applied and achieved various accreditations. And it was a good model, and we developed very strong links locally.
In recent years, the Environment Working Group have organised an annual event entitled Canal Awareness Week. A series of events are organised during the course of the week with a special emphasis on educational trips along the canal.
So what they done was they had to dredge the Grand Canal, and they done the dredging back in 1918. They probably done a few before that. But what we found in the winter months when we get heavy rains, the materials that have coming up, some of them are dating back to 150 years old, some of them are older. And what we found...
The day we took the children down on the canal walk was, I thought, very exciting. I thought the children were very excited. As we were walking along, Sandra would bring their attention to the various species on the canal, because I don't think the children in this area get really an opportunity to probably visit the canal. But if this group can in some way make the canal a better place to bring our children, well, I think we can open their minds to such beauty we have in this area, and I think it's a great educational tool for our children.
As part of the 2005 Canal Awareness Week, the Environment Working Group launched A Walk on the Wild Side, a booklet compiled by one of their members, Sandra Scully. The booklet detailed the flora and fauna to be found locally in and around the canal.
Hopefully the book will, encourage people maybe to look more into their history, especially in their own areas. If I can help and show people what's over there or the little bit that's there, well, it's creating an identity for everyone, especially the youth in the area.
The canal is not just a ribbon of water, it's a corridor with wetlands and grasslands and hedgerows and trees beside it, various different places. And that corridor could be damaged unless we have the awareness of the value of what's at risk. And that's what I think this book does.
As part of its ongoing activities, the Environment Working Group consults with other environmental and conservation organisations to extend its knowledge of the natural and built heritage of the canal. The Irish Wildlife Trust has been assisting with investigations of the wetland areas close to Omer's Lockhouse.
Wetlands are basically areas of transition between land and water. The most commonest wetlands that people think of are bogs, but they also include marshes, fens, salt marshes, and areas around the edges of lakes and rivers. Okay, I'm just going to go in here with the nets again and just have a play around and a sweep with the net just to find out what organisms we have living in here. Our wetlands, unfortunately, are threatened by development and pollution, and because wetlands, the way wetlands work, they can be lost very quickly, and as a result of losing wetlands, we lose the life that they support. Now, these things that look like woodlice are actually known as water louse, and they feed on the detritus that you get within ditches and ponds. Okay, the plant we have in here is brooklime, and it's a plant that grows in basic waters.
It's not smelly or anything, any of that stuff you pulled out now.
No, it'll have a smell, but it'll be almost a natural smell. Just what you'd expect from mud vegetation. It's not polluted. Yeah. The Irish Wildlife Trust would love to see areas like this preserved and kept open for the community, so there's some interaction between the community and nature, where people can learn about their natural heritage and learn to respect it and to use it in a sustainable way. Crayfish are related to crabs, they're crustaceans, and the way they grow is that they basically crack open their hard shell and they drink water and expand their bodies, and then they harden a new shell that they've been growing underneath.
With the developers, our big fear is that they will do what they've done everywhere, is build right up onto the Grand Canal. They look at a landmass and they see a blank canvas and have no idea of the damage that they're doing to the natural and built heritage.
The Environment Working Group has a vision for the future of the canal in the Clondalkin area. This vision recognises the historical significance of the canal and its unique natural and built heritage, and includes a series of improvements and activities that would greatly contribute to the development of community amenities and tourist potential in the area. To achieve the vision, they recognise that many other key players need to become involved.
As a group, our vision for the future of the canal has to be to build on the work we've already done as a group, to build on stuff like the Canal Awareness Week, to bring in major players, to seek their commitment, to retain the canal as an amenity. It's an amenity of huge natural beauty for all of the people of Clondalkin, young and old alike. There's places up there like the old Lockhouse, Omer's Lockhouse as it's known, that needs to be retained, not just knocked down by any developers that come in. That would be sacrilege, I feel. Another part of that vision for the future we would see as a group is putting in things up there, like maybe a horse project for young people, so that they can be comfortable with this amenity. It's there right in the middle of our community, between North and South West Clondalkin, and it needs to be utilised, and I think as a group we can't lose sight of that for our vision.
In order for it to achieve what the Environmental Working Group want on the Grand Canal would need active participation from Motorways Ireland, South Dublin County Council, all the developers that have an interest or are backing on bounding the Grand Canal, the likes of Dukas that would deal with both the natural and built heritage, and outside non-funded groups, voluntary groups like Conservation Volunteers, Irish Wildlife Trust, on Tashka, people that would be able to give us that expertise to go forward as a group to deal with the issues and the planning.
So, yes, since 1760. We actually have, the maintenance and the restoration and the development of the infrastructure, which is the canal system, but we also very much depend on the cooperation from the local state agencies, the local authorities, the private sector as well, and most importantly is the local communities that actually have built up over this last 200 years along the canal system, and Clondalkin being one of those as well. We'll be very interested in working in partnership with the local people, with the local authorities, and to that end we would actually be presently carrying out investigative work and probably pilot studies with, say, South Dublin County Council in the Clondalkin area, with the view to upgrading the canal to a higher standard, so that people, both the locals and both people passing through, can use it to the maximum advantage.
Well, the vision that we would have for the Grand Canal would be to combine a range of activities and uses in that area. I mean, it's almost 30 acres in extent. First of all, we have to take cognizance of the fact that there's a proposed natural heritage area existing along the canal. We want to work with Waterways Ireland and the National Parks and Wildlife people in progressing that and in maintaining the amenity and the biological diversity that's there at the moment. We'd like to see a range of community facilities in the area. The area, that Grand Canal Park as we call it, at the moment is quite derelict. No facilities whatsoever. There isn't even a football pitch on it. So we'd start with facilities, as I say, like football pitches, working up towards skateboard parks, children's playgrounds, facilities to access the canal. For example, people who might want to canoe there, there's no place where those people can store canoes, access canoes, change, shower afterwards. So that we would see some sort of community facilities in those areas serving sporting needs and other community needs as well. We see there's a potential actually for cycling and walking routes from that park right into Lucan and potentially down into the Liffey Valley whenever that project takes off in the future. The County Council cannot, on its own, make a success of this park without working with the local groups. We've already talked to the Clondalkin Partnership Environment Committee. We've a lot of contact with local residents groups, particularly since the 2 sewers went into that through that park, and they're quite concerned about what happens to the park in the future. We cannot make a success of it without the help of those people, and we want to at least look at their ideas and hopefully take as many of their ideas on board as possible. For example, their vision of the restoration of the old Omer's Lock House, which I think is a very commendable idea, and see how we can fit that into the plans that we might have. We're working on plans for that area at the moment, which in time hopefully will be presented to the councillors for their approval, and we would hope that those plans would come after consultation and working with the people in the area.
You can't compare Clondalkin to a stretch of canal down the country. We're a very urban area, densely populated, and not without its problems. And I think we have the bones of a template for developing a stretch of a canal in a highly urbanised area. I think what we need now is we need more support and direct working relationships with organisations such as South Dublin County Council, Waterways Ireland, Dukas, and I think when those relationships develop further, our template will expand and we'll put more flesh on it. And I think what we have now certainly is unique.